record.
Welcome, everybody. Hi, good to see you, and welcome to almost 2019, where Christopher and I have got some things to share that we want to hopefully land well and square in your hearts and minds in a way that leaves you better off and leaves you with some tools to work with. And I'm going to prod and guide Christopher along in sort of in some sort of fashion, hopefully orderly and logical, and makes sense, and bring the best out of him, because he's really got some tremendous insights, as we all know. And if you don't know and you're new to Christopher Power and myself, well, Christopher has got a lot of fantastic history that makes him who he is today. And I guess we're all the sum of our history to a large extent. And we've all got a contribution to make. And I think one of the mysteries of life for some people, and one of the ventures we're all on and the paths we're all on, is to discover the mystery of us and to find out why we're here. It's one of the age-old questions, why we're here. And I can tell you from 4 years of experience, up close and personal with Christopher, because I'm only live meters away from him, that part of his reason for being here, the raison d'etre, if you like, is that he's here to provide support to other people in a way that brings the best out of them. It's it's like Aladdin's lamp in a way. We're all Aladdin's lamp, and we look old and tattered and beaten up like any other old lamp. But when you polish that lamp, which is Christopher's kind of calling, is from my perspective, these are not his words, they're mine. But when you polish that lamp, out comes the genie. And that's what Christopher likes to refer to as magic. The
Genius.
The genius. And we're all geniuses. That's the story. I love these wonderful old stories. I'm very well versed in lots of old Judeo-Christian stories, via the Bible and various other related scriptures, because that's where my history comes from. But as a kid growing up, my parents gave me a number of Aesop Fables books, and I love the Aladdin's lamp story. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the keys to success in 2019, and some of the topics we're going to cover are listed in the email that went out. But I think it's important that we understand, we start with the essentials, because it's the essentials in our life we've got to build on. And so I want to, pass to Christopher with this sort of foundational start to this conversation, or this lecture. And I think one of the great essentials we need in our lives is to know what we are and what we do. If we don't know what we are, we're here, apart from being human beings, but what kind of human beings are we? Clearly you're a male and I'm a male, and we just happen to know that we're heterosexual male, so that's kind of fairly fundamental. But beyond that, what internally, inside, what kind of genie is going to come out when you rub this lamp? And it's not the same genie for every single lamp, is it? So, absolutely. Yeah. So in considering what we are and what we do, how would you, with all of the technologies you're quite expert in, begin to address that? Because I think that lays a foundation for the rest of our conversation today. What we are and what we do is so important.
Well, we're designed to enjoy life.
Hallelujah.
Right? And to consciously create success, which is a little, both of them are tricky.
They are, yeah.
Because life, there's so much going on in life, and you can literally say life throws a hell of a lot at you.
And one man's success is another woman's failure, isn't it?
Exactly. Everyone's different. But the bottom line is that we're here to learn to enjoy life. Maybe that's the word I left out, to learn to enjoy life and to consciously create success, you can see that drive behind everything. Now, it's not given that you enjoy life.
No, it's given to enjoy life.
Yeah, we're
but
given
not
life.
that you
We're
enjoy
given life to enjoy,
Yeah.
but we have to learn to enjoy it and have to learn to consciously create success. Right? Now, those two things are fundamental. And if you're alive, you find those two fundamental things worth living for.
Something I've learned from you over the years, and with particularly with your intense, wrong word, well-rounded understanding of human design as a technology, is that there is a signature for each of us that is unique to each of us, and yet the same for various groups of people, which is kind of like an indicator that we're on track, and that we're not only coming from the right perspective.
Right.
Because if you're coming from the wrong perspective, it's very hard to hit the right goal when you've got the wrong perspective. And so part of the thing I've found to tuning my life up, for want of a better term, has been to, one, realise what my perspective actually is, which is kind of like my starting point. I'm always coming from my perspective if I'm being true to myself. If I'm coming from your perspective, I'm probably kowtowing, or if I'm coming from religion's perspective, or I'm coming from my mother's or my father's perspective, precious as they may be, perspective, I'm not really coming from my perspective. Therefore, it's very hard for me to end up in the place that I should end up.
Be yourself.
Because my perspective means I must be myself. Yeah. So it's a long-winded way of saying, which I like to do, by the way. I like to be long-winded sometimes. I also like to be concise, and I'll tell you when it's important which way I am, okay? So why don't you address these perspectives? Because, in my case, for example, it's peace is that lets me know I'm doing it right, even if the shit appears to be hitting the fan,
right,
so to speak. Pardon my French, I can speak in Latin if you prefer. That's a big key indicator for me.
Well, yeah, see, I spent the culture I was brought up in and the education I had really emphasised perspective. But I've spent a lot of my life since then getting my feet on the ground. And what grounds perspective in practical terms is, what are you designed to do? How do you operate? Okay. Now, if you're operating in a way that isn't right for you, you're going to see things incorrectly. If you're trying to be a woman when you're actually a man, you're going to see things in a distorted way. It's not going to quite click for you. So there are basic operating systems, you might say, in the world. A lot of people are literally designed to generate energy. Right. They're sources of energy, and I don't mean sit there and just like that. I mean, put energy into things. Work, you could call it work on things. Right. So that they put the work in, so that whatever you've come up with actually happens. Right. And they're called generators because literally they generate energy, and that's 70% of the population.
Wow.
Now,
that makes sense, kind of, doesn't it?
Well, the reason I'm emphasising this is there is a major shift in 2019 in terms of the importance of people not only understanding it and even experiencing it a bit, but actually putting it into practice and applying it.
Understanding what particularly,
that each of us have a unique way of operating.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because one of the things you see looking at the world is that people have got to get their feet on the ground if things are going to work. It doesn't mean we abandon being spiritually motivated or inspirationally or creatively motivated. But if we don't get our feet on the ground, things are going to get worse. If we do get our feet on the ground, in simple terms, things could get significantly better, dramatically better. And so knowing that 70% of the world is going, give me something to work on, to put my energy into. That's
something meaningful.
Yeah, something exactly. And half of those are just wanting to be sources of energy. Plug into me. I'm one of those. Just plug into me, and then we'll see what I'm truly capable of in contributing to what you're doing. The other half generate energy and say, give me something to put my energy into. Right? Now, technically, they're called generators and manifesting generators, but you can get so lost in the jargon. There are 70% of the population just want something to get their teeth into. And half of those are wanting people to plug into them so I can get the best out of myself. And the other half are going, give me something to put my energy into that I can really help move along and get happening. Okay?
Yeah.
So that...
I'm just thinking, sorry.
Go.
You know, I left school and started an electrical apprenticeship and completed an electrical apprenticeship 4 years later, and then did an advanced, training in the whole thing for another year. So I understand generators from an electrical, mechanical, machine point of view very well. And I also know that since we've had electrical generators, it's revolutionized the entire planet. I mean, just try and imagine your world a couple of hundred years or whatever it was ago when the first electric generators were, before they existed. What would it be like without electrical generators? I mean, no light, no fridge, no hot and cold running water.
You just had to deal with fire, and that was it,
pretty much. So when generators evolved from fire, because that's kind of a generator.
It is.
Rubbing two sticks.
That's why
together.
I said it.
Yeah, exactly. Evolved into a more sophisticated expression of generating, then the whole world benefited.
Exactly.
So there's something, there's a metaphysical, allegorical sort of story in there, isn't there, for people?
Taking what I just said, 2019, if you're a generator, the world is begging to benefit from what you can put out.
Right.
Either through doing things that you put your energy into, or allowing people to plug into you.
Well, it strikes me too that that's kind of like a foundational or a launching point, perhaps not foundational, but it's a launching point to even greater evolutions, because since electricity's been ubiquitous, everybody's got access to it, in case you didn't know what that word means, is that it's catalysed other inventions of great merit and benefit, hasn't it, to the whole populace? I mean, absolutely. Electric cars, electric lights, airplanes, telephones, you name it. Probably half the modern inventions. Yeah.
So here's the thing, that the other 30% of people are designed to take advantage of that. Right? That there are all these people with all this energy to put into things. They're designed to take advantage of that, to take it in and do, like 8% of the population is there, well, we've got all this energy, we've got to start something up to get it moving. And then there's another 20% of the population that are going, well, if they're going to put all this energy into things, let's make sure they use it wisely and effectively and successfully. So their job is to actually go, how can I use these people to work on the things that I'm developing that can be successful? It's not use and abuse. It's like, how can I harness this energy and make sure it's used successfely?
So that's the human design type known as the projector. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the projector, I've been thinking about projectors lately, because I have two children that are projectors. My eldest and my youngest are both projectors. and there's a big age difference between my eldest and my youngest. I sort of had two families, and my youngest is only 6. And it was a very conscious decision I made about 20 years ago about 20 years ago, I decided that in about 20 years' time, I'm going to have another child. And at the time, I thought I was going to adopt another child. I was going to come to Asia, scour around, find a little coffee-coloured, girl. I wanted a girl for sure.
Right.
And, have another child and see where that went. So as it turned out, I did come to Asia 20 years later, and I did scour around, and instead of finding, a little coffee-coloured girl, I found a coffee-coloured woman. And between us, we made a coffee-coloured girl. So
latte.
A latte, yes. Yeah. In Thailand, these halfies are called lakun, which is half and half. I mustn't lean on that table.
And by the way, they're very highly valued.
Well, yes, a number of the halfies have ended up being either Miss World or Miss, Thailand. Well, heaps. Most of them end up being, most of the Miss Thailands are halfies. Occasionally, you get the ones that aren't half, but they're often blessed with good looks. So, or cursed with good looks, whatever your perspective happens to be. So she's a projector, and now that I know she is, which I learned, about 2 years into her life, which I didn't know with my eldest son, who's 37. My MO, my way of parenting has evolved and changed into a different way. And because I see this little projector constantly wanting to do exactly as you said before, provide guidance. I mean, already at 6, and God, she's been doing it ever since she can speak. Yeah. She's been, you do this and you do that, and can you get me this? And
once she gets to know you.
Well, that's not your experience.
That's exactly right.
She doesn't say 2 words.
And that's that whole thing of projectors are here to make sure that what we do is successful. And you can't do that if you're trying to be successful. You need to be in touch with the fact that to guide people to be successful, success is part of who you are. You've got to find that within yourself and then use that.
So that's the signature of a projector?
Yeah, well, that's
when you know you're coming from the right perspective, isn't
it? That's exactly it. When you're chasing success as a projector, you've missed the point.
Right.
You are success. Right? Now, your gift is to find people who want to take advantage of that and guide them to be successful at the work they're doing or what they're initiating or the feedback that they're giving to other people. But the beauty, there's 20% of human beings are there with a prime purpose to guarantee that the other 80% of us get it right.
So in a group of 5, one of them's likely to be, a guide there.
Yeah, it's going to be there. And if they spend their whole time working at success or chasing success or trying to start things up,
they're not being themselves.
Well,
really.
Everybody's missing out.
Yeah.
They're missing out, and the people around them aren't getting the benefit of their guidance. Now, again, the reason we're going to really basic human design, which wasn't even the point of this, but the basic thing. See, when you look at this year coming, 2019, there's a lot of expansion and inspiration and big picture perspective happening for a year, right till the end of the year. So we need to not only smarten up, but step back and really see the big picture and find what inspires us. And at the same time, there is an incredible demand for all the changes that have been happening for the last 8 or 9 years in the way we relate to authority.
Right.
Now, I'm not just talking about political authority,
but it's pretty evident in that
it's obvious.
area, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
You know, all the countries of the world, you know.
Look at all the changes that have happened even in, say, American politics in terms of authority in Britain,
Italy,
Brexit,
and so on. You can just X that away.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay, just say love it. So we're doing this. Good. Thank you. Sorry.
Little messages popping up on our screen.
On Zoom's telling us we've been gifted with things that I've already paid for. So here's the thing. Authority is becoming the thing now that for the last 10 years we've had to transform it. We need to bring new life into authority. Let me just finish. And at the same time, we've just hit a point where looking at authority over the last couple of months and for the next 2 years, we have to look at authority and go, well, what is it that scares us about authority? What can we learn about authority? And what in developing authority will liberate us? In other words, we have to come to terms with the practical world. Hence, people like Jordan Peterson are very popular because it involves responsibility and loyalty and being the authority in your life. And human design has been pottering away till now, developing, being alternative, a little bit out there, a bit, cutting edge. Yeah, and now it's going, hey, people need to find authority within themselves. Every great teacher has always said, what you're looking for is inside of you. Of course. If you want great authorities in your life, the place to start is within you. And the thing that human design says is you've got a unique way of exercising authority, otherwise known as deciding what's right for you in your life, deciding what you're here to do, and deciding what to receive from the world that will support you doing it effectively. So 70% have to wake up to the fact that, look, are you here to put your energy into things? Because if you are, get in touch with your energy. And do you need people to plug into you, or do you need to put your energy into them? Another 20% have to say, look, I'm here to guide to make sure they're successful. So if I'm starting a business up, I seriously need to get people to do the work, and I take the role of guiding them to do it effectively. Right. Okay. And there's another 8% out there who don't, hold on, before any of these people do anything, something's got to be rolling, something's got to be started. I'm here to find out what I want and get the ball rolling down the mountain. Then I hand over to people to do the work. Look at the business that you're developing, Aussie Mega Mall and all the offshoots of that. You're here to get it started, but you've got to get people in to do the work and people in there to guide it so that the work that they do is successful.
It's kind of a catalytic role, isn't it? I used to love, science as a kid, and I was never the kind of scientist that you are, but I did love science. It was one of my top 2 subjects along with English. And I loved somehow or other, there was something very attractive to me, silly as it may sound, that a catalyst could go in there and create all this activity and not be changed one iota.
That's exactly right. I mean, I'm a trained scientist. I taught chemistry, right?
Well, yeah, that's right.
And it's exactly right that there are people who are designed to go out there and stir things up and get things moving without being changed.
That's me.
It doesn't mean they don't grow and evolve.
Sure.
They become better and better and better catalysts. Sure. They become more effective catalysts. They
get their timing right.
They get their timing right, and they put their energy into something worth catalysing.
That's right.
Right. That's where. And how do they do it? They tap into their authority. Now, authority comes in two forms. There's inner authority, which is how you decide what's right for you, both in terms of doing and letting things in to your life. And there's outer authority, which is you have
Experience.
You have experience, you see the world in your own utterly unique way, and you're the authority on explaining that to other people. Now, the reason we're making such a big deal about authority is that's probably the primary place in 2019 where the action is.
Okay.
And it's setting
Inner
up
or outer or both?
both.
Okay.
And the action in 2020 is only going to get more. So
what action are you referring to?
Well, okay. We've had 7, 8, 9 years of evolution of our experience of authority.
Right.
What that means is all the changes that are happening in the world, naturally, societally, all the deep-seated
There's been a lot of
psychological
corrupt
changes.
iterations of that, hasn't there?
That's all part of the change.
Yeah.
Corruption is like a sign this needs to change.
Right.
Evolution is a sign that this thing is changing.
And it's being exposed, isn't it? So, you know, putting people in a position where they can't keep doing it that way any longer.
Exactly. And the other thing that goes with that is evolution of things that do work.
Yeah.
Right. So there's been a lot of evolving. We started off this decade with, it's all freedom. We had 30, 40 years of freedom. The age of Aquarius, you know. And then the age of Aquarius died because it needed to, because you cannot have freedom without responsibility. Hence the popularity of governments that want to take responsibility, right, rather than just be free. And people like Jordan Peterson, whose whole message is you can't have freedom without responsibility.
And governments too that want to allow people to accept their own responsibility. I'm thinking of the Scandinavian countries where that's been quite evident, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Of course, people would sometimes when you get that freedom, okay, now you're authorised to go and live your life, you know, in a way that you've never been authorised before. We're taking off a lot of the restrictions,
right,
like the Swedes, for example, in so many genres. There can be a pendulum swing the other way where you go a bit nuts with it. It's like sort of when you graduate from being a toddler to being a teenager sort of thing, and you go into that, there's that transition phase where you try a lot of crazy shit, you know, and then you kind of work out, you bang your head against a few obstacles and upset a few people and get a few smacks around the head, figuratively or literally sometimes, and it sorts you out of it. And life has a way of doing that to us too, doesn't it?
Let me give you an example. If you're 0 to 30 at the moment, 2019 is going to be a ramp up in learning experiences.
Right.
You're going to have to face what you fear the most, what will teach you the most, and ultimately what will liberate you. It's called growing up, right? But people are going to have to grow up in a very profound and deep and meaningful way. Now, you don't see that when you look at the media happening, but that's 0 to 30. 30 to, say, 58, 60, it's like, okay, I know I've got to face what I fear the most because that will teach me the most and ultimately liberate me, right? And particularly around authority at the moment. So we're going to have to come to grips with responsibility and authority and decision-making. They're the three biggies.
Responsibility, what was that?
Responsibility, authority, and decision-making.
Yeah.
In fact, the key to it is decision-making.
Yeah, that's actually my next point I'm going to bring you to when we get past this one.
So decision-making enables you to be responsible. Being responsible allows you to develop authority. They're the three big things happening at the moment.
You can't really have effective authority without responsibility because it'll implode, explode, you know, become catastrophic in some way, won't it?
Yeah. Let me share you something. There is, when you look at the natural trends, called astrology if you like or whatever, but the natural trends, the big innovation that's just going to happen this year and last for another 7 years is going to be in decision making.
Right.
Just as big as what happened in technology. Right. Now, things like human design, which are all about how you design to make decisions, have been pottering away there for 30 plus years as like an alternative thing. But now, this year, 2019, decision making is going to be crucial to innovation, even to new technology.
And when you say decision making, obviously, you know, we're all making decisions, you know, thousands of them a day, really. But you're talking about, you're not just talking about decisions that are
effective decision making.
Effective.
Is that a better way of putting it?
Yeah. I'm trying to say, like, you know, if I'm you know, hungry, I eat. There's a decision right there. It's kind of subjective, but nonetheless, it's operational. So what you're really talking about is conscious decision. Like, what should I do? Should I do A or should I do B, C, D? And I've got all these choices, options. Is that what you really? So when it comes to sort of building,
there's the urge to eat, but then there's what do you eat?
Yes.
And what is available.
Right.
And all these other things that run off it.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about with decision making is doing something that truly is valuable to you. Either you do something that produces value when you do something, or you allow something into your life that adds value to your life, that enables you to do more effectively what's right for you to do. So the whole thing is about, we're going to have to be more conscious.
Right, that's the word I was running around with as well.
We're going to have to be much more conscious about decision making, and it hasn't been for the last 80, just a little less than 80 years, as important as it is now.
Right.
Now that you're going back into the decisions that were made 80 years ago, brought about wars on a global scale, right? Now, but particularly it was very dramatic last century.
Oh yeah, First and Second World.
I mean, it was global wars. It wasn't just local wars or whatever. So we're coming back to, wow, we need to make decisions that don't end up with global wars, because that could create major problems for everybody, especially now with nuclear.
Technologically, nuclear.
But it also applies personally. I mean, that's the big picture, but it also applies personally. We need to make decisions that produce peace in our life, or satisfaction in our life, or success in our life, rather than frustration and anger and feeling as though you're a failure. You know, bitterness at the world and bitterness at life. I've been here and I've put all this effort in and nothing's ever come of it.
Well, those adjectives you referred to, bitterness, you know, frustration, anger, blah, 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 they're the flip side of the you know,
it's bad decision making.
Yeah, I know. But, you know, when I was talking about, you know, the important thing is to understand what you are and what you do. Exactly. And that starts with your perspective, because if you've got the wrong perspective, you're not going to end up at the right destination. And the signature is the key to staying on the correct pathway, within the framework of the correct pathway. So if I'm operating out of peace, just to use my own personal demeanour, if I'm operating out of peace, and even more importantly, if I'm getting into anger, I need to ask myself, because I can actually be angry and be at peace, because sometimes it is appropriate to be angry. But if I'm in an angry space and not at peace, then that becomes a warning. It's like an alarm bell. You know, pull up. You know,
this is beautiful, because this is the practical application, not just the theory or the experience.
Exactly. That's all I'm
the anger that you're talking about is the one that robs you of peace.
Yeah,
that distracts you from peace.
Good distinction,
right? It's not just being angry in general. No. You know, you've got to walk around being all nice.
Yeah.
You know, because people like yourself, people who are here to initiate things, there are times when you need to be angry in a healthy way.
Yeah.
but it's the anger that takes you away from peace, that robs you of peace. For the people who work, who love to put all their energy into things, why put your energy into something that frustrates the hell out of you?
Precisely.
Right? It's not going to help you. Right? If you're someone who's here to guide people to success,
What's the flip side of that one?
It's being, well, when you're bitter,
Right.
it's the bitterness that distracts you from the fact that you already are successful. People get bitter because this isn't working out the way I thought. And, you know, whereas, hold on, this is something that's taking me away from success. I need to get out of here, or give it a break. I need to come back to who I am, which is success. That's what I'm here to do. There's no point guiding people to be successful if you're not in touch with success, because you're just giving them theory. So for those people who are here to guide, success is their bottom line. And it's who they are. It's not even something they have to get to. It's something they have to make sure they're not dragged away from. Now, we've had thousands of years of being dragged away from that.
It's like a compass, isn't it?
Exactly.
It gives you your true north.
It's exactly. The point of 2019 is laying the cards on the table. People have talked about this for 30 years. People have done seminars on it, done stuff on the internet under the thing of human design. But 2019 says, great, glad we got the information out there, great, glad people are aware of it, even experiencing a bit of it, but let's lay the cards on the table. You know, you can't afford not to be in touch with peace.
That's right.
On a regular basis.
Well,
not
I'm robbing myself.
Well, it's a sign that you're going off track. You're being distracted. When you're not at peace. Oh, now, again, it's not your mind imposing it on you. It's your whole existence remembering and feeling, you know, the thing you fear the most, the thing that will teach you the most, the thing that will liberate you. You know, the fear is that you're not at peace, or that you're not satisfied, or you're not successful, depending on what type you are. And it's like, hold on, it's the thing you fear the most, so let it teach you when you're being pulled away from.
This relates to the point, you know, in that you put in the one of the areas of the topics we're going to be covering today is how not to let your mind rob you. I mean, it's like we've all probably seen the movie, well, we haven't all, but a lot of people have seen the movie Top Gun, and there where, you know, Tom Cruise is an ace pilot, but he experiences vertigo. Now, the thing about vertigo, and I'm not a pilot, but the thing about vertigo is that it leads you to believe and be thoroughly mentally convinced of something that's not actually happening. You feel like you're upside down, or you feel like you're going down when you're actually going up, or you feel like you're going up when you're actually going down. That's vertigo. It's completely about face, flip side of who you really are and where you're really meant to be. And I guess as human beings, we all experience vertigo in when we're out of our perspectives wrong, and we're out of our signature key self. You know, if we're not in our peace, that's kind of a vertigo experience.
It's a really, really, really good example.
And it's highly dangerous. It's life-threatening.
Exactly.
And if someone doesn't come along with you and kind of marry up to your plane and flip you over again and get you, come on, mate, I'm going to take you all the way home.
Well, the guide people are there to make sure that the people who are working with them or for them or whatever don't get vertigo. That they're able to actually do the work without getting freaked out about it or frustrated with it. And look, if this is frustrating, you deal with it and get the satisfaction out of it, or you go, we're heading in the wrong direction, let's step back, and where do we go? And the people who are the guides, their job is to actually go, hey, everybody, let's step back a little bit, or let's take a different approach, or let's have a break and come back and tackle this tomorrow. You know, let's take some time. We all need a rest. Everyone's getting tired. What you're doing is accessing the ability of the mind and the subconscious and the unconscious to figure things out by having rest, by being entertained,
making time for them to work.
making time for life to give them hints and clues.
Yeah.
All of this stuff, people have talked about it for years, for decades, but now's the time. 2019 is rubber hits the road. It's do it. Now, one source described this year coming as the year of grace, which is to do what comes naturally, which initially sounds like, oh, well, we'll just go along. No, hold on. Do what comes naturally to you. Initiate. That's what comes naturally to you, Darryl. Work on things until you're satisfied that they're working. That's what comes naturally to me. Work on businesses, work on with clients, work on, educating people about how to use their design. So I'm satisfied. I can walk away and they're going to do well at it.
Exactly. By the way, a little plug for Professor Christopher, unsolicited by him, but initiated by me because I want to. It's a great investment of your time, effort, money to have some one-on-one time with Christopher. And, you can do that a number of different ways. And you can have an individual consultation, or you can have take a series of them where you're going to get a lot more cohesion in the benefit to you and a much better experience overall. And I know, because I've been discussing this with Christopher of recent weeks, that there's a new program that's going to be operating in the new year with Christopher, and I'm going to be playing a small part in it myself, where it's the human design fundamentals. So all of this kind of stuff we're talking about today is going to be delivered in both in a theoretical, logical, lecture-style presentation, but also in a practical, down-to-earth application sort of way, which is part of my contribution to it as well. And it's going to be 26 modules or lectures, which are going to be done over 12 months. So they might happen, 1 week, 2 weeks, and then, you can't make it the following week, whatever. But it's going to be done. And we're actually looking for, and Christopher's looking for, about 10 or a dozen people to participate in this as a group, where we want a couple of generators, a couple of projectors, a couple of manifesting generators, a couple of reflectors and straight out generators. Just try and get a couple of people from each of the different personality types to be able to work with, because we'll have some feedback sessions and some Q&A sessions, and we'll work specifically with individuals. This will be a highly valuable year for you and for those that participate. And then the program's going to be packaged up and made available to people in the future. And because it's going to be sold later, Chris was offering the whole package for the whole year for a bit under $3,500, $3,450. So if that's sort of resonating with you as you're listening to this talk at any time now or in the future, shoot an email off to Christopher and get a bit more detail, and we can, put you in that program. It's going to be great. Anyway,
can I add to that, and also what's happening in 2019?
Right.
One of my favourite sayings, I can't even remember where I picked it up, but a guy called Denny Johnson in Australia. He once said to me, the advanced work in anything is the basics done really well, which is why we're talking in such practical depth about things that are so basic if you know anything about, say, human design. But the advanced work is learning how to apply the basics really well.
Exactly.
And that's what we're going to aim for. This isn't just, look, you can come in as someone who wants to learn from scratch, but you can come in as someone who really wants to take their business to a whole new level.
Right.
And, or whatever, their family, their relationships, their sport. I've done a lot of work with people on that sort of thing. Yeah. In fact, I've said to you over the last couple of days so much is no one gets the best out of me until they come to me with what means a lot to them.
Sure.
No matter how pragmatic it is, and just draws it out.
Well, as an electrician, again, and coming back to the generator example, we're sitting in a room right now which is electrically lit. And the reason it's electrically lit is because Christopher put a demand on the generator. You know, there's a generator somewhere in this, you know, far away from where we are, that's generating stuff. And it'll only bless individuals when they put a demand on it. So how do you put a demand? Well, you go over to the wall, and there's a little white box there about this big with a little toggle in it, and you toggle it down, and that switches on the generator benefit for you. That puts a demand on the generator, and here we are enjoying it sitting in the light. So that's kind of what you're talking about, isn't it?
I'm just having flashes because I'm thinking, I guess a manifesting generator is like when you put your foot on the accelerator and the car just...
Yeah,
but again, you're making demand on it.
Yeah.
But the projectors, the people who are there to guide, their job is to make sure you're getting the best out of.
Yeah, and they're the navigators in the passenger seat, you know.
Yeah.
In the rally car.
Yeah. So
anyway, a little bit of a sales pitch there. Forgive me for that. So once you understand what you are and who you are, and you've got your perspective, and you're kind of you're in touch with lining that up and knowing when you're on track and off track. That's pretty key to get before you go anywhere. You want to make sure you can do that. The next thing is you want to get your timing right. Because I've used this illustration before, and I'll use it again, I'm sure. You know, I remember being a property developer years ago in New Zealand, where I grew up, and I had this idea to build, you know, these particular, or to renovate old Victorian two-story villas. They were beautiful, and there was a lot of them, and a lot of them were rather dilapidated, in a dilapidated state. And I had the idea to buy a few of them and completely gut them, and then turn them into, you know, absolute state-of-the-art homes, but that looked on the outside like Victorian villas, and they were really quite beautiful. But as it happened, I did two for a start, and there was actually four. Sorry, I did four for a start. And I got stuck with them, and nobody would buy. They looked beautiful. I had tons of people come through, compliment them. They loved them, but this just couldn't get buyers. And then I ended up selling them and just kind of breaking even. Didn't really make any money after, you know, a year and a half's worth of work. And then immediately following that, everybody started doing the same thing, and there was a real boom in the renovating of Victorian villas. Now, the only problem I had wasn't the idea. I got the right idea. I had the wrong bloody time. I should have been a year later.
Been there, done that.
Or haven't we all? So is there a way that, you know, the technologies that you know of, and I mean, I can come from my Judeo-Christian technologies, and I can talk about it from that sense, from a sort of spiritual, religious sense. And I think there's a great enlightenment coming across the religions. And a friend of mine, an old minister friend of mine, said to me just recently, he said, there seems to be a blending of the religious perspectives and the scientific perspectives and the, you know, the metaphysical woo-woo kind of perspectives to sort of congeal into one whole better perspective overall. I can see that happening. You know, I've seen it happening with us, because a lot of your ideas make me go, what the hell? You know, but have in the past, and I'm starting to, you know, I've adopted some of them and go, well, maybe there is some truth to that, and maybe this, I've done the same for you, because you had a rather horrific Catholic upbringing, which, you know, was good but bad as well.
It's also, you taught me how to have great relationships.
There you go. Well, that's a pretty old technology. It's been around a while.
It's made a big difference in my life.
But, you know, the Bible stories that I've been able to relate to you, which once you might have just not really seen some of the value in now. And Jordan Peterson, if you haven't come across Jordan Peterson yet, Google him. He's, you know, only been around a couple of years on the public stage, but he's already had over a billion views across various platforms and so on. He's a phenomenon of our time. And he's really making a lot of these old archaic stories come alive with practical meaning, rather than people getting caught up in the religious, thou shalt do this and thou shalt not do that.
How to take responsibility for living.
Yeah. So is there anything in the technologies you're expert in that indicate? And I know there is, because it's I'm setting you up, but to get your timing correct, because clearly that's really bloody important. It made the difference between making a small fortune and just getting out by the skin of my teeth, which I've done a lot of in my life. And
So the thing about timing is there's a good time to do things and a not so good time to do things.
And a bloody awful time to do things.
Yeah. Look, when you're 6 months old, it's not a good time to run a business.
No,
right?
probably not.
So the real thing about 2019 and why people would actually want to listen to this is the real question is, well, what's the timing? You can go into astrology and predictions and all this, but the motivation behind it is, what's the timing good for?
Well, listen, just on that point, because from a Christian perspective, the astrological thing is, a bit of a no-no for some. But there's not a human being on the planet, including the most devout religious people, Christians, whatever brand you happen to be, that doesn't live by astrology. I mean, you get up when the sun comes up, you go to bed after it goes down. If you're a fisherman, you go fishing when the moon, you can tell where the tides are at because of where the moon's at. They're just two astrological things that are impacting everybody's life.
The problem with astrology, technology, science, anything like that is when people say, this trumps me being responsible, therefore I hand my fate over to that, rather than go, let's see where the market's at, where the environment's at, what energies we've got to work. There's no point getting a suntan at midnight. Right? So when you go, okay, this gives me more capacity to take more responsibility, that's when it's useful. Technology gives me more capacity to be more responsible rather than more distracted. That's when it makes a real difference.
For sure.
And you'll see that because people will be making major decisions over the next 7 years about technology and what value it actually brings.
Absolutely.
That's going to be a huge trend. By the way, if you're out there and involved with technology and stuff like that, really let in what I'm saying. If you can produce something that that shows people how they can get value out of it, not just distraction, but real tangible, practical value out of technology, you're going to be in a great place to make not only a great contribution, but a fortune. Right?
Yeah.
Make it more sensual, more user-friendly, more valuable to the client, not more valuable to the people pushing the ads. That can have its place as well. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So coming back to looking at what's happening in 2019, as I said, the energy for expansion and inspiration is big time. Right? Stepping back, looking at the big picture. Stepping back, looking at things like human design and saying, okay, but what's it really about? What's the value in that technology, right? Educating yourself. Great year for expanding your horizons, becoming more of who you really are. So there's this...
Becoming comfortable with who you are.
Exactly. Nicely
Getting
put.
to like how you are.
Yeah, and
wouldn't that be something if you could actually like yourself?
Being inspired by what is inspirational within you, right? And at the same time, it's got to be disciplined. It's got to be feet on the ground. It's got to enhance your ability to act with authority in a responsible way. Enhance your ability to contribute. Now, again, I'm not saying this to burden your mind with responsibilities. I'm saying this so that you can get a grasp on things that are inspiring and practical and mature are going to do very well.
Mm.
And our understanding of society, the structure, discipline, authority is evolving. So we can't just go back to the past and entrench what we think happened there. We have to grow and evolve, but not overthrow everything. The only authority that needs to be overthrown is the authority that does not allow for freedom, that does not teach you and liberate you, educate you and liberate you. Right? That sort of authority we need to embrace even more.
There can't really be responsibility without freedom, and there can't really be freedom without responsibility.
Because
I know you like to say freedom without responsibility leads to tyranny.
Exactly.
Well, we're seeing tyranny, and I don't again mean to be political either today, but extremists. If you're an extreme leftist or an extreme rightist, at either end of the extremes, there's the tyrant, really, isn't there? And that's just not. The extreme leftist, that leads to nihilism, and the extreme rightist leads to, the tyrant dictators. And life, the best place to be in life is somewhere towards the centre.
There's no power on either extreme.
Not really, no.
The power lies in having both freedom. The more free, and that's something we've pursued in the last 50 years, I know from my own life, the things that I were involved in, we pursued freedom. And it demands, if it's going to last and be healthy, that you use that freedom responsibly and you take your freedom and invest it in responsibility. And people who want to be responsible and powerful need to invest in freeing up things, freeing themselves up, giving their children more freedom, giving their population more freedom with responsibility. China, it's all responsibility and very wary about the freedom because they've seen in their history the negative effects of too much freedom. Now, of course, people are in there with their egos manipulating and all that other stuff, but that happens everywhere. And then you have all this freedom in California where I lived for a while. It's all freedom, no responsibility. Oh, just have abortions, and that doesn't matter, and China, and it doesn't work. You need to be responsible about the way you have sex. You need to be responsible in the way you do business. You need to be responsible in turning up as who you are and being a guide if that's what you're here to be, being an energy generator if someone who does the work like myself, if that's what you're designed to be. I'm 70 and I'm working as hard as I've ever worked. But it's energizing me.
Sure.
And, initiating things that you truly want because you want to do them if you're one of these people who gets the ball rolling.
Well, when you're really yourself, it's fuel for your life. So people that live to be centenarians and beyond generally are very active people, maybe in a less strenuous way, but no less active, if you know what I mean. A friend of ours said some years ago, or about a year ago, to me, I remember it, said that sitting is the new smoking.
Wow.
So sitting.
God. and I just learned something, everybody.
And
that's what my masseuse says to me. You sit too much.
Sitting is the new smoking. And it's killing people because of our lifestyles these days are in front of screens and behind desks, and we're working here and here, and we're not getting out and just getting movement going, which is so important. And that's the nature of life, is to move. I mean, when something stops moving, it's usually dead. If your heart's not moving, well, you're dead for sure. If your brain cells aren't connecting anymore, you're dead. So movement is so important to life, and so there's a point where you can take that too far and be an extremist in the movement and not get enough of the other end of the spectrum. But what you're saying here is that you're working more than ever, kind of thing, at your age, but it's actually enlivening you, it's invigorating you. on many ways.
And I'm learning how to do work with far less stress and far less, being driven by things that aren't me.
Yeah, that aren't important.
That aren't important, but you think they are when you're younger.
That's the tyranny of the mind too.
Yeah, exactly.
The mind is an extremist.
So the balance to the mind, coming back to what you mentioned earlier, is the mind is a beautiful thing. It's an incredible gift. But if you let it run your life, it becomes a dictator, a tyrant. It demands things of you that are completely out of tune with who you really are. It envies other people and tries to do what they're designed to do, not what you're designed to do. It misses so much. So what is really important, again, about 2019 and the years following, is we develop the authority to be in our body and enjoy being human with a brilliant mind. But our body makes the decisions about what is right for us in the world, and our mind observes, learns, creates, does all sorts of things to fine-tune it, but it checks the body with, are you ready for this? Right timing? Or is this something that's going to benefit you at the moment, or maybe in 10 years it'll benefit you more? Again, timing. And are you ready to be responsible for letting this in or for achieving this? Because if you're not willing to be responsible for it, you're not ready for it. And what do you have to do to be prepared? And the body has a very good sense of where you're at in this world at a very, not only intuitive level, but deeply emotional level.
Well, at a really, really micro, nano sort of, what's the word? What's that? Quantum level is the word I was searching for. At a quantum level, which is very difficult to be fully cognizant of, but is a sort of a sense of experience in the moment that sort of you just know shit. Sometimes you just know stuff, don't you? We've all had that. We call it intuition or inner teacher. The Christian religion calls it the spirit. Human design technology calls it inner authority. It's all the same technology at work, and which brings me to the point in sync with getting your timing correct, or as an aspect of getting your timing correct, is to understand that the various types of persons that exist, like Christopher mentioned before, and you've got the signature of your type there, whether it's peace or satisfaction or success or delight. These are the major categories they fall into. The timing mechanism that works in you and me and Christopher also shows up in a unique individual way, and largely falling into three categories, which I've just put here. There's instant timing, which we refer to as instinctive, and a great example of that is if you've ever looked out your kitchen window or your window of your house and to your lawn, if you have one, and seen sparrows on the lawn, or if you've just ever seen sparrows on the lawn and they haven't seen you, as soon as you make a little noise or open the door or something, they don't look around and go, "What was that, guys?" No, they're just gone. There's instinctive reaction and decision making that thinks about it maybe later. Maybe they fly up into the trees, look at, "Oh, that's just Chris, and he's bringing out the bread for us to eat," and like he does everyone. Let's go back down and eat it. It's safe. But they don't process the whole experience first and then make their decision. Exactly. Right? It's instinct. And then there's people that aren't instinctive, but they are, but they don't. That's not their what would you call it?
They're more responsive.
They're more responsive. Oh, wow, that's really nice. It's Christopher. Great. He's bringing out the bread again. That's nice. That's sort of pretty fast, but it's not instant. It's in the moment. It's in the experience. And then there's the slow people that make decisions slowly. They go, interesting concept. I'll have a think about it and let you know. Let me sleep on it.
the word that's come up for me over the last year or so for that is you've got reactive, like instinct, and then responsive, in the moment. And then to me, I call it relating.
Yeah.
Let me relate to this for a while. Let me get to know it, see if I'm still comfortable with it or whether I want to pursue it further or whether that's enough. And they take the time to relate. By the way, 50% of the whole population operate on that. They're constantly relating to things over time, and they need to take their time making decisions. Right. The other 50% have a variety of other things, most of which are either in the moment or instantly, and that's important to know because you're a slow relating decision maker. I'm a very in the moment decision maker. And it's learning how to operate and work together that way.
Well, there's a potential for conflict, isn't there?
There is, and the bigger conflict comes when one or the other of us are forced to operate, either in your case too quickly, or in my case, drag it out. And by the time I've thought about it for 6 weeks or, even a day or two, I'm completely out of touch with what was going on and whether that was going to be a benefit to me. I'm thinking about, I could have, here's a perfect example from my life. You're going out, when I was younger, and you're going out to a party and you see a girl and go, and then I'd spend days thinking ruminating about it, feeling frustrated.
And in the meantime, she's hooked up with your best friend.
Yeah, or whatever, But it was frustrating because I didn't respond to what was happening in that moment. I never learned it. See, decisions.
Part of that's a confidence thing, isn't it?
Well, hell yeah. Well, I was taught not to.
Yeah, exactly. Confidence in who you are.
But no one recognised and taught me, a lot of other people take the time to make decisions, but you're better if you just trust your gut. Now, sport taught me a bit about that because you didn't have the option.
Precisely.
Right? Which is why I liked sport. But then when I was successful at sport that took a lot of time, I suffered. But I was successful, but I suffered for my success. So I learned success and suffering go together, which is completely useless as far as my life is concerned. Right. Success comes to me when I'm responding to people plugging into my energy and I'm giving back in the moment what they need, because my body is very clever at knowing that knowing what does the person need right now. That's what I'm really good for. What energy will take them to the next level? That's what I'm good at. Whereas for you trying to do that, it'd be just like, no, let me take my time. My partner's the same as you. She needs time to relate. I knew instantly I met her that there was something happening here that was good. And I talked to her a year later and I said, you were iffy for a while, weren't you? She said, yeah.
What do you mean for a while?
Yeah, exactly. Like you trusting me. It's taken years. And not totally, but, really getting so we can have things that we disagree about and sort it out, and knowing that you'll hang in and all that sort of stuff, that it's worth hanging in. I had to build that over time with you to decide, look, I can trust this guy. So if you're someone who needs to relate to people to make a great decision, take your time.
Or relate to things, not just
relate to things,
experiences.
But me sort of working things out gets in the way.
Precisely.
Now I can use my mind to observe what works.
Sure.
Right? And I can use my mind to teach people and to educate people and to know what is going on. But the decision-making process, I've got to literally, I'm one of these people who needs to be in the moment. Right? You're one of these people who needs to take your time moment by moment by moment over time until you're clear. Other people need to think about it after, because they're just out of the way or the car's going to hit you. Instinct, as you said. And that's really powerful. Now,
what percentage of people are instinctive, do you know?
It's roughly 10 to 20%. Right. My figures may be not exactly.
And about half are
half need to relate, and the other 30% or so. Well, there's some other variants. There's some people who've got very unique decision-making processes. If you wanted to say how many are there, you'd be looking at 7, but the top 3 are the big ones. The top 3 are the big ones. You know, and 50% of people need to really take their time and relate to what's going. They need to ruminate, they need to consider, they need to sit with things over time. Now, how many people in politics actually do that? Because 50% of them should be taking their time to really think things through, really consider things.
Well, this is the challenge, isn't it? When you know, I mean, from a political point of view, where our leadership, they're in one team or the other. I mean, it's the nature, if you live in a democracy anyway. Then the nature of democracy is you've got 2 competing sides always, and that hopefully the reason it was initially set up that way was to actually arrive at the best outcome for the majority of people. But what's happening, unfortunately, in a lot of this human nature, this lower human nature, but it's nevertheless an aspect of human nature, is to be towing the political party line, so that even though you've got a great idea, and I know somehow in myself it's the best idea, but you're not in my party, so I can't vote.
Okay, well, this is the clash between the mind trying to run the show, rather than be the observer and the sharer of the experience and the contributor of possibilities, right? But not the person who decides the timing and the energy and the appropriateness of this is absolutely spot on for you. You've got to be in the world to make decisions that work in the world. And having this consciousness, this mind, is an incredible blessing when it's doing what it's designed to do.
But it's the enemy of your inner authority.
Well, it's the enemy when it tries. It's the enemy when it tries to run the physical world. Because it's part of its job. Look at our head. It's a little bit out of looking down on or looking at what's going on. That even describes its function. It's meant to be part of the world. It's like, you know, those old songs, in the world, but not of the world.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Bible's saying it's in the world, but not of the world. And therefore, its job is to be able to step back and observe and learn and share and educate and inspire and create all this stuff. But when it comes to doing it, your head's not going to walk down the shops and buy you your dinner. You are. Order a restaurant. Your body's going to take you there, and your body's going to digest the food, and your body's going to get you up in the morning. And when your body stops working, there's no point staying. It's called death. Right? It's that practical. And we've been intellectualizing this even in human design for 30 years, but at some point the rubber has to hit the road, and 2019 is when it's the beginning of the rubber hitting the road. The next 9 years from 2019 onwards is going to be the rubber getting a grip on the road, getting traction, and as getting ourselves so that we can live in this world and enjoy the experience and consciously create success without doing it purely intellectually or in a woo-woo new age way. It's like, well, what is going to produce success in this world? And from the end of the next decade onwards, it's all going to be about that. But it all starts here.
Well, it's a biological fact that that you've got neurons all throughout your body, but a lot of people only think of neurons, the neurons that are in their brain, in the head, I mean, because your brain actually goes right down even into your gut, brain tissue.
They call it a second brain.
Second brain.
In science.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So, we've got these neurons disseminated all throughout us, but we've seemed to have, elevated the ones in the head, in what we generally call the brain, as being, the Lord of all, and not to discount it in any way, but really, as you point out so nicely, is that it's a great tool and it's a great value. It just needs to be take up its rightful position in the scheme of things. It needs to be integrated, the scheme of life. It needs to be not running the show all by itself. I've never heard it said so beautifully. It's not here to run the show all by itself. Yeah, that's where we create the problem. Yeah, it's not valueless. It's extremely valuable. Without it, you wouldn't even exist. Exactly. But it's not to be a tyrant. Sorry, I'll just have a flash. Flash away. The next things, we talked about the expansion and the authority thing and how evolution is involved with that. But in between the expansion and the authority with the evolution, in between the evolution of our ability to be wise in the way we use our authority, which is a great one-liner about 2019, becoming wise about how we exercise our authority. Right. And making sure that we're making decisions according to our down-to-earth real authority. Wholeness. But in between that, where the action's happening is in terms of really relaxing and visioning and dreaming. And the way it just came to me last night is, if we're going, there's all this drive, symbolised by a lot of things, that we've already discussed, for responsibility now. But if you're going to be responsible, you've got to learn to relax. And what that means in terms of qualities is humility. Humility is going every day is new, is fresh. Not going, I made a mistake yesterday and therefore I'm going to repeat it. That's not being humble. Humility comes from relaxing and allowing life to be, and it also opens you up to being able to dream, to vision, to use imagination, because whenever you use imagination, you have to be willing to see things in a different way or to imagine a better possibility. Okay, so imagination is really big. Now, that's sort of, it doesn't just require mental imagination, it requires emotional clarity. Now, that's something we've worked on, mental clarity, for a long time, historically. But there's this thing that's crucial to relationships, which is crucial to 50% of the world's decision-making process. It's called emotional clarity. And it's not mental clarity, it's something completely different. And the way I've come to grips with it in my own life is because I sense it in a lot of other people. I'm very open to that myself. Is emotional clarity is when you have no second guessing. Your mind can come up with all sorts of ideas, but something in you knows, no, yeah, that's a good idea, but right now, this is what we need to focus on. This is what we need to do. In other words, you've got this emotional stability that despite all the things that are going on, you know what the next something needs to be. To, isn't it? There you go. So you're emotionally defined, so you can explain it better than I. It's something you can commit to. Beautiful. Spot on. It's something you can commit to without second guessing, without doubts, without worry, without anxiety. It's just like, maybe that's going on up here, but this is what I know I need to do.
I've taken the time and I'm clear this is what the next step is. Right?
There's a great parable that Christ issued about the wise man and the foolish man, and the foolish man built his house on the sand,
Right.
and when the storms came in, his house got washed away. And the wise man built his house on the rock, and when the storms come, he survived it. Now, there's a whole lot of truisms to this story. One truism is that storms come. Doesn't matter where your foundation is, the storm is coming.
Right.
Okay. Life is full of trouble. Don't kid yourself. There is no, you can't go and become a Zen Buddhist monk and escape trouble. You can't buy into any philosophy anywhere on the planet and escape trouble. And if you buy such a program with anybody or invest your life in it, you're building your house on the sand, because that's just BS.
How do we know? Because we're always where we are. We're there. There's going to be trouble.
But, after 64 years and 70 years respectively, a compilation there of, 130, 40 years, neither of us have found anybody anywhere on the planet that hasn't had trouble.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Even the greatest teachers.
Exactly.
In fact, they often attract more, but they handle it beautifully.
That's right. So there's no escaping trouble. What there is surviving trouble. And so when you follow your inner authority, whatever it happens to be, you're actually building your house on the rock, on bedrock, on immovable, solid, enduring stuff that's going to make you survive and thrive ultimately.
Look, if you've got a business with problems, relationship with problems, personal problems, health problems, anything, when your rock for someone who needs to take time to relate, to make a clear decision, is the willingness to take the time to decide, to relate to what's going on, which means if you've got a health issue, you've got to relate to your health issue. If you've got a business issue, you need to relate to your business. And take some time to get to know what's going on and what's going on with the people until you get to that point where emotionally, no matter what doubts people throw at you, you know clearly what you can commit to, using your words.
Yeah.
If you're one of these people who responds to what's happening in the moment, my rock, because that's what I am, is the moment.
How do you relate to that in a complex business? I mean, there's a lot of businesses that just cannot. The problem that demands a decision cannot be addressed in the moment entirely.
Which is
how does that work?
Well, what's happening is dictators running a business is going out.
Sure.
However, people taking responsibility for being the final decision maker or the person who sets the course, that's not going to go. But being someone who controls rather than someone who works collaboratively, people who have good advisors, people who do the research. Look at the President of the United States. He doesn't do everything himself. He takes final responsibility. But there are people out there researching everything, doing everything, looking at things, running this part of it, and he goes and visits those people because he wants to encourage them. He wants to know what they're going on about. So we're now starting, let's put it this way. The big change in human development in the last couple of 100 years is we've never had as free will as we have now. It doesn't mean we exercise it, but we've got it. It's built into us now. The ability to exercise our own will for the good of the tribe, for the good of our family, for the good of ourselves, for whatever, for the good of humanity. But mainly we've got the will to take care of what's in front of us. The other thing that we have is a unique emotional system that's able to relate. Now, whether it's open like mine is, or very specific like
So the
yours
emotional part of the human being, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly here, is the emotional part is getting much more airtime, so to speak, and acceptance in the masses, in everywhere,
and
because it's becoming its role in the human being, or in humans being, the role of the emotions and our emotional, system is being elevated to a position,
becoming much more useful,
much more authoritative, much more significant. Yes. Whereas instead of just, referring it, those very emotional people, getting the bloody way. Why can't they just get a grip?
Well, here's one thing. It's slowing down previously we were driven by emotion, Romeo and Juliet, right? It's a whole story of people being driven by emotion. Not just Romeo and Juliet, the whole town.
Oh, sure, it's an allegory.
Right? It's been driven by emotion. Now we have the capacity, we're evolving the capacity for emotional clarity, which is another form of intelligence.
Right. There's a lot of buzzword out there at the moment,
emotional intelligence. But it's not, that buzzword is a little bit deceptive because we think it's emotional thinking or emotional. It's a new level of intelligence, or a new level of awareness is probably the best way of putting it. We've got instinctive awareness, instant, like, fight or flight. We've got mental awareness. It's interesting the way you're saying things and the way you're dressed, and, mental awareness. And then there's emotional awareness, which is much more tied into how do I relate effectively to myself, my world, the people in my world, to being alive, to my age, to any number of things. It's going to be the key to successful relating. Now, when you look at politics and relationships and businesses and that, we've got a long way to go in terms of effective relating that enables us to work together as a team without creating negative drama that creates problems in the business, or creates problems in our relationships. We've obviously got a lot to learn. Well, we've got this capacity now to learn how to take our emotional nature from being a bit of a liability that you've got to get on top of to becoming a massive asset that deals with so many problems that up until now, historically, have been major world problems. Now, that's where the hope for the future, for humanity evolving, not only lies, it's where the evolution is happening now, so that we can actually relate successfully together without having to dominate mentally or instinctively, survival or theory, concepts and religion dominating us. We can have concepts as assets. We can have religions as support systems and assets. We can have beliefs as great assets. We can instinctively learn how to take care of ourselves. We can make survival something that really benefits us, right? But to do that properly, with all the humans we've got and with all the relationships we have, we need emotional sophistication. Not just being driven by emotion. Emotion has far more potential than that. It has the potential to be a major form of awareness, but it's married to the body. Sure. It's not just a mental thing. You've got to bring body and mind together and have them working together as one, synchronizing responsibility in the body, freedom to think, right? And when they marry together, it gives you a source and an access to power that's unlike anything we've experienced as human beings before. Now, 2019, as I said, is when the rubber hits the road. Now, it doesn't matter whether you've got defined emotions that are very specific, or open to other people's emotions like I have. It's both of those are assets. Both of those enable you to work with emotions in a unique way. Learn how to use that.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the things I've learned with myself, because I'm totally open. So I've had to learn a lot about that. But this is why taking what 2019 offers and then working with people like myself who can help you tune that. But also, it's not just, oh, come and see me, I'll help you out. The responsibility on my end is stop hiding in the shadows, operating at 30 or 40%, and step out there and go, I can help. I can contribute. Plug into me and I'll energize you so you know how you operate at your best, and then run with it. That's the most successful times in my life, when I taught, when I counseled people as a consultant for decades. When I educated people, they plugged into me and I gave them what they needed to be able to go with what they have. And you and I have talked about this. It's no longer me, I'm the authority on human design. No, I can help you access the real value of your design so you can run with it. That's my job. Work with you for a while and you run with it, and my celebration is your success. You know, and this is where it's happening now. You know, every one of us is having to relate to what is it we really bring to the table that's exceptional. 2019 is going to say, you've got something you do gracefully. Bring that to the table, because that's what everybody else wants access to. It's a year of being graceful, doing what comes naturally. Get in touch with that. Find out how that works for you. Because if it works for you, it'll attract other people who want it to work for them. Someone asked a question about, you know, on one of these guide people, and, you know, should I be doing all the work or get other people who are the generators, the people who have the energy to work? And so find people who want to do the work, and you make them successful and make all of you successful working together. And your job is to keep an eye on things and make sure it's successful. And if you go, I can show you how to be successful, then I'll work with you and then put together a team that can do what you're here to do. And, you know, focus on, if it's your business, how can I help other people be more successful? That's the primary direction, because it's my business. In my case, who can I get to plug into me that I can turn on so that they succeed? We talked about this yesterday. You know, I'm a great supporter. You might end up on stage being the band that everyone's raving about, like AC/DC or something, but I'm the person who makes sure that when you get on stage, you're being yourself, 100%.
Well, a big gig needs a producer, it needs a director, it needs a sound man, and, you know, multiple sound men, lighting guys, you know, stage production, blah, 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 is all that. And then somebody at the, you know, there's a hierarchy of competency that keeps developing and developing in each different area. But at the end of the day, somebody kind of's got an overview of what's going on. And like a conductor in an orchestra, you know, he's not playing any of the instruments, but is conducting the
Getting the best out of each.
Getting the best out of each one, making sure they come in the right time. You know, they've already
make sure they know what they're really good at, not what people have told them they should be good at. That's the, it's, see, you know, you've come up with some brilliant suggestions and one-liners today. You're so good at that. You're so good at knowing, get this started and it's going to go somewhere.
So, you know, for people tuning in that are wanting to or need to, or in a position where it's their situation individually is important, but they're involved in a team, and I'm not just talking about a family or a few friends, but I'm talking about a business kind of person, somebody who's in business and relating to a larger group, or somebody who has a sense of wishing to be in a business and feeling, you know, that's where they need to go, and wants to make sure that they attract the correct people at the right time for the right position. How do you get your team right? Let's just say, for example, let's take the first analogy. The person who wants to get a team together because they've got some big ideas, they've got some big dreams, they've got some inspiration or some energy they want to put in something. How do they attract their team?
Well, that's the word you just used. The key to it is attraction. Now, the way human beings are designed, we're designed partly in a very defined way to do something that's unique to us. We're designed to do. Everyone's got a design to do something. Even if you've got very little there, you're designed to be like a mirror, to reflect things to people. So, but most of us have very specific things we're designed to do. And we've got a whole other part of our design that's primary purpose is to attract to you what you need so you can do what you're designed to do. Now, because it has to attract, it has to be open. And so it has to take on board a ton of things. Like when I walk down the street, my eyes take in everything. If I'm going to get across the road here in Thailand, I better. And, there's people here wanting to sell me stuff, wanting me to come for a massage, wanting to do this. There's people from Russia and Germany and America, and there's all these people everywhere. I take them in. But what I'm looking for is what's going to support me doing what I'm designed to do. So I'm looking for a shop where I can buy what I came to buy. Right? So the problem until now, the focus has been in the mind. How do I figure out how to do stuff? And it's been blind to our ability to attract and the need to be discerning about what we let in. And so we've got this decision-making process that tells us what we're designed to do and when's the right time to do it, because this is your time on stage. You're here to do this next act. If you don't turn up, the whole thing's going to be like, it's your job to fix the car or to run the business or to make the sale. That's what you're designed to do. That's crucial. But the other thing is to decide what you let in. And the same mechanism decides what's going to support you, because it's going to help you do what you're designed to do even better. Right? And up until now, in things like human design, it is a major vulnerability because we can suck up so much stuff that's not relevant to us.
Knowledge just puffs our heads up with pride, doesn't it?
Or
just I've got a certificate to say so.
Convinces us that we're supposed to be doing this when we're not designed to do it. Right? And all of us are vulnerable to that. But when you become aware of the part of you that can attract what you need to support you doing what you're designed to do, and start shutting down that to being just open to everything and being discerning about what you take on board, because it supports you. How do you know? Because you start bringing out more of the best of you. That's how you know. It actually gives you decent results. You start feeling good about what you're doing. You start doing it successfully. You start guiding people rather than trying to make the business work.
It's like I said, in discussion a few weeks ago, that the key is to be the message, be who you are. And that in itself has a magical attraction. And I think if I'm understanding what you're saying here, for the individuals out there, and we're talking about the ones that have big dreams, have big aspirations, want to build a business, but are at sort of ground zero or not far from it. The key really here, if I can put my perspective in, is to get comfortable with who you really are and start or live more of that. Because in the living of more of that, it's a magnetic experience. Now,
exactly,
and when you attract, as Christopher likes to use that term, attract, and I like it too, you know, and the human design technology shows you where your attractors are, actually. And so, you know, I'm just going to like tease you with that in case you don't know what I'm talking about, but you go, wow, that's really interesting. I wonder what my attractors are. Great. Well, this is the guy to talk to right here. So when you understand what your attractors are and you kind of turn them on and they start working, then people do come. So it's like this, you know, allow me, you know, if you would, to use another biblical story, and it's one that we've all heard in one form or another, is where Jesus feeds the 5,000. Okay, so Jesus and his mob, his crew, go out into the, you know, the hill country, and he's preaching to them all, and, you know, sharing his wisdom and truths, and everybody starts getting hungry, and the disciples, the key guys, come up to him, hey boss, crowd's getting a bit hungry out there, mate. What can we do? And he goes, what have we got? What have we got? So here you are, you're out there in your own wilderness or on your own mountaintop having these wonderful inspirations and ideas about what you want to do with your future. You go, I'm really hungry for something more. Yeah. The question to ask yourself is, well, what have you got? Exactly. What have you got? Because it's amazing what you can do with what you've got. Exactly. So the disciples came back and said, well, boss, the only thing we've got is like 5 little loaves, kids' lunch, basically. Right. 5 little pieces of bread and a couple of little fishes, you know. Jesus goes, good, bring them to me. So what's the real truism here? Well, what you've got, bring it to the greater one in you, the inner you, the real you, the part that can make something of your life. Okay? Exactly. And then what did Jesus do? Well, he prayed over it. What does that mean? Well, he blessed it. He spoke well of it. That's what the word bless it actually means. It means to speak well of. If I say I bless you, you know, it doesn't really, oh, that was nice. But what does it mean? Well, to bless you is to say Christopher's a really good guy. You know, he really helps people. He's got a great heart. He's got a great motivation, great intention, incredible talent, years of experience, and he can impact your world in a way that blow your mind sometimes. So that is what blessing is about. It's to speak well of. So here I am with the little thing I've got. It doesn't look like enough for 5,000 people. God, well, that's a good thing to start. Start with God. Where's God? Well, God's inside you, if you believe what Jesus had to say. So there's 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and he said well of them. He spoke well about them, and then he started handing them out. And the miracle happened. So what's the truism for you today as an individual wanting to move your business dream forward into something bigger? Start speaking well of what you've got. Well, if you don't know what you've got, you need to find out. Exactly. So you're not qualified to even have a business if you don't know what you've got in yourself. I'm not talking about your technology. Sorry.
What you bring to the table.
What you bring to the table. Exactly. And then speak well of it and watch the magic happen. Okay? So that's my little sermonette for the moment. That there's something magical that happens if we want to build a team, and we're an individual without a team right now, we need to look at what we've got and stop begging, stop wondering, stop feeling negative, oh, I've only got this, if only I had that. Stop talking about what you don't have. What I experience all the time with people that I help in my world is they're constantly focused about all the things they don't have. If only someone would, you know, do this for me, or if only someone would do that for me, if only someone would do something else for me. And they're whinging like little Jack Horner, sitting in the corner, sucking his thumb, and they're feeling sorry for themselves. And that doesn't help, because that's not responsible.
It is a response, but it's not responsible.
No, and it doesn't lead to freedom. And it doesn't lead to maximisation of what your potential really is. What leads to maximisation of what your potential really is knowing what you've got to start with. What's the raw material here? Well, you know, I'm one of these guys that can initiate. I'm one of these people who can make things happen. Great. What sort of, you know, initiator am I? Well, I'm this kind of initiator. I've got a lot of emotional, you know, energy, and I've got the ability to talk. You know, guess what? That's not obvious, is it? So how can I leverage that and start to speak well of it, bless it, go within yourself talk to God, pray if that's how you do it. But, really it's got to come from within, without. God can't do for you what he doesn't do through you. So, whoever your God is, your God can't do anything for you but through you. So get in touch with what's there and then start to speak well of it. And that becomes a magnetic thing that creates miracles, creates things. What is a miracle? A miracle is something, in my definition anyway, that cannot be explained in the normal course of events. There are no miracles in reality. It's just that we just didn't know how it worked. Just like there's no magic in reality, just that you, as the observer of the magician, doesn't know how he pulled the trick off, but he knows how he did it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to do it. Does that make sense? So this is the key, I think, to attracting the right team. If you're at ground zero or not far from it, and you're wanting to get going, start with what you've got. Find out as much as you can about what you've got. And what have you got? Well, you've got what you are.
Become an attractor.
And that is attractive.
Yeah, and the way you do that is figure out what you're designed to do and stop doing
what you're not designed
to do. And that unblocks all the openness in you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got to be responsible for what then comes in, which means you've got to take responsibility. You've got to make good decisions, right? Because when you open up, you're going to draw a lot of possibilities, and often at the beginning, they're not necessarily the ones you particularly want. So again, it comes down to the technology of decisions, which I talked about earlier. There's using imagination, but not letting yourself be carried away with it. Learning to use imagination responsibly.
Being realistic.
Yep, there's being realistic and down to earth, and there's also open and expansive. And then there's this one last factor. Again, I'm talking about, there's a particular factor that in the first couple of months of next year is going to shift. Now, this is the factor that integrates consciousness and practicality.
Right.
It's also very much about healing. It's very much about real magic, right? And currently, it's in this thing about forgiving and realising it's okay to let go of. Your life can change and it's not going to threaten everything. But there are certain things that it's now time for us to let go of. For me, one of them, I was involved at the beginning of the New Age, and the New Age is finished. I've seen it pass away. Now, there are still people hanging on to the forms of it, but it doesn't mean that what that was about has been wasted, but the best of it is now being taken and added to the mix of creating a world that's new, that's evolved, where we grow, but where freedom and responsibility come together, where people find their own personal power, where people take authority, and because they're the authority in their own lives, they don't have a problem dealing with authority. They realise certain people need to take authority for things to work effectively. So there's this nice balance going on. But the question that's going to be asked in 2019, that's going to be the biggest challenge that will integrate this and bring it all together, is what do you really want in your life? What are you here to do?
It's not a simple question, is it?
No, it's a profound, it's a very powerful question. Yeah. And it requires immense honesty. Honesty is going to be a very big deal next year. It's, if you've got the guts, you've got the commitment to be honest, it can be a great year. If you're going to be dishonest, it's going to be a year where it can be disgrace. It can lead to you being disgraced. It can be disgraceful experiences. In other words, you're going to try and do what does not come naturally to you. And the simple word for that is, it will fail. Not because you're a failure,
because it's fake.
it just doesn't work for you. You know, it's not what you're here to do. It doesn't support you, and it will fail. And if it does, go, thanks for the message, and correct. You know, that's being responsible. That's being graceful. It's like, oh, that was awkward. I won't move that way. I'll move this way. Ah, that's better. That frees me up. I can have more fun with that. I can be more creative. I can contribute. I can be lord or lady of my own domain without having to force other people to negate themselves to be with me. You know, there is so much joy, beauty, creativity, empowerment, honesty and freedom, but making it work in the real world. You know, trying to impose an idea on taking care of everybody versus people taking responsibility for their life and then working together. That's the difference. Imposing a religion or an idea versus, okay, I'll take responsibility, learn how to make my life work, and then share that with others. And then more and more and more and more we get our world to work where it didn't work in the past. That's the way of next year and the future.
I love one of the New Testament teachings about this that I haven't heard many Christian people or ministries ever mention, but it's clearly there. And it goes like this. It says, you are a royal priesthood. Now, this was a leader in the church addressing the church, you know, the congregation, the people, saying you are a royal priesthood. Now, he wasn't saying some of you are, not or you lucky ones or you highly evolved ones, you all are. So whether you've just been born into the royal family or whether you're the king, if you're in the royal family, you're a royal, right? And then you get a certain education, you learn how to live as a royal. I think something I'm getting here with what you're saying is responsibility is really where we're all learning to live like royalty. And so therefore, if you're a noble and I'm a noble, I treat you as a noble. And I'm also a part of the priesthood. You know, there's an old story in the Old Testament about a king called Melchizedek who met Abraham, who had just been out and defeated a whole lot of his enemies. And Abraham, after this great battle, he met the king Melchizedek. And Melchizedek spread a table for Abraham. And Melchizedek was a king and a priest. Okay, he was a royal priesthood. And Christ he was an example of Christ, actually, a typology, if you like, of Christ. And so he was a king that there's no history of who his mother was or who his father was. And after that one incident, he was never, seen again. So, at least not in the Bible stories, but he's referred to a few times in narrations. So I think there's a mythical sort of analogy here for us that, this is a type of us. We're all born into a royal family. Every human on the planet has got royal blood, in them. And we're all priesthoods. We're all here to really go within and to understand the mysteries and deliver our aspect of the mysteries. You're delivering your bits of the mystery to me, and I'm delivering my bits of the mysteries to you, and we, in this way, serve each other as nobles. I think there's some kind of analogy we can hold on to there in what you're saying. It's going into 2019 is obviously super important.
And where you take it is not in here, but you take it into the body, because...
Well, this is the temple.
Well, the thing is, this is going to finish, right? And then everyone will go off to live their life. What it's about 2019 is about letting the knowledge and the understanding of this become real. So find the royalty in you. Find what is great about you. The beauty about things like human design and a lot of the work that I do, in fact, if you summarise my work over the last 45 years, it's about showing people what's great about them and helping them apply it in the real world so they get to experience it and share it. That's all I've done my whole life, is find out what's great about me to make my life better, and then find ways of really identifying what's great about other people and helping them own it, and then helping them relate to each other in a way where they're owning that and everyone's benefiting. And there's this one thing about evolution that I've studied science, well, been involved and taught science, but one thing about evolution that hasn't been really emphasised is the whole point of evolution is a word I would use called courtesy.
Interesting.
Right? And courtesy is the ability to allow another person to be themselves and allow yourself to be yourself and still work together really effectively and authentically so that everybody benefits. It's actually the work, it's the energy behind sales. It's the energy behind sexuality. It's bringing the best out in each other. It's providing something that enhances another person's life and you benefit from sharing it. It's evolution is all about us learning to be fully ourselves and work together and leverage that.
It takes commitment, doesn't it? Because,
look at sales and sexuality and all the other things.
Yeah, well, attraction, I often used to say, because I've done a hell of a lot of, family seminars and relationship seminars and child raising seminars over my years. And I often have said to audiences and couples and so on, look, like attracts like, and then it repels, and that's just the natural journey of things. You get attracted to people in the moment because you don't see who they really are. You see who they present as, or you see bits of them that they really are, but lots of them you don't see. And then you get attracted, and you might even, get married. And then you then you begin to see things you didn't know were there. And some of those things, can be annoying or frustrating or anger producing or disappointment creating. And so you can go through the repulsion phase of relationships, and don't kid yourself. Trouble's coming. Build your house on the rock and things will stick together. But if you don't build on the rock, in other words, being true to yourself, and as Christopher points out here, courtesy is part of being true to yourself because it's actually built into your nature, believe it or not. It's just been unrecognised, unacknowledged, and unallowed to blossom. But when you allow it to blossom, then resolution comes again, and then you go to a richer level, and a bit more conflict can happen. And I love Solomon's wisdom, in the book of Proverbs, where he says, "Iron sharpens iron," sharpening, two knives together, and that's friction. That can hurt, that can be discomforting, that can be scary, that can create sparks. And don't kid yourself, a meaningful relationship involves this. And Solomon said that iron sharpens iron, like good discussion between friends. But sometimes a few sparks fly. That's what happens. But if you've got courtesy there, that will arise ultimately. If you've got commitment there, then both parties know this is not a threat to the relationship. This might be a threat in the moment, and you might need to go away and suck your thumb for a minute, come back later, or whatever. We'll work it out. But commitment means we're here. We're making this work. I'm not going anywhere long term.
Yeah. Katai puts it very beautifully. We're here to recognise that problem so we can resolve them.
Katai's not Christopher's
my partner. Yeah, and there's so much truth in there.
So listen, we've come to the 2-hour point,
okay,
where we're now going to address some of the questions that have come up, and I hope you've had some value already, and we're going to address some of the questions. And one that has come up is, and this is to you, Christopher, do you see the sciences and the religions or spirituality merging in a new way? It's kind of a two-part question. And what will this mean? So say that again. Do you see the sciences and the religions or spirituality merging in a new way? And what will this mean?
Yeah, well, the whole thing's got to...
In 2019, I think.
Yeah, well, the whole point is it's got to come down to earth.
So religion's sort of, not being very down to earth on some levels.
Well, it's been useful.
Science kind of has.
Yeah, but even then, how can I put this? Coming down to earth means the end result is that a wide variety of people benefit, but it doesn't. But it benefits in a way that they can be responsible for their own lives, not benefit in the fact that they get handouts. Right? We've had 50 years of chasing freedom in this world after the world wars, and then we had the alternative scene, the New Age, all this stuff. And
it's been an explosion in scientific discoveries and technologies. But, just in science, I mean, we've explored how things work.
Well, look at the internet. I mean, you've heard me complain about this because it's become so complicated that unless you're a nerd, you can't work out the simplest things sometimes. It's
without help.
Without help. But it's very frustrating if you just want the thing to work, right?
Sure.
And there's a huge market there for people to come in and go, look, we can make your internet experience, your computer experience, your phone experience seamless, elegant, beautiful, a pleasure, not having to constantly research all this stuff just to make something happen here.
Well, this is the progress of any new idea. I mean, cars came out and then, there was the complication of learning to drive them. I mean, that's pretty complicated. There's a lot of bits and pieces. You have to learn to drive a car. You don't learn to drive a car in a week.
Well, here's the thing. We've learned all that technology, but not this.
Yeah, so this, I think this sort of comes to...
And this is where the action is. This is where it's all happening. This thing is evolving on its own.
Yeah, sort of with or without us.
Well, yeah, it's going to, and we'll either enjoy it or not and miss out. But who we are as human beings is see, cars evolve because we work on them, right? We evolve quite naturally, and if we work on them, the experience can be far more enjoyable than if we ignore it and just let...
It's more of a working with them, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
The body rather than working on them. I mean, you do work on it a bit. But.
Yeah, but we have the ability to... Remember I said right at the beginning, we're here to enjoy life and to consciously create success. We have the ability... I mean, an ant can enjoy life to some degree, I guess. I don't know. But we have the ability to enjoy life and to consciously create success. In other words, we can contribute to the process, or we can slow the process down, or make the process far more difficult. We can turn a lovely environment into a mess. We can turn the ability to generate energy into nuclear weaponry. We can use our intellect to destroy our lives, or to enhance them, to understand other people, or to subjugate them, or to beat ourselves up, or to make ourselves healthy. So it all comes down to, are we going to... We've developed for a long period, thousands of years, our intellect in our body, so that our intellect has come to grips with and added value to our world, called civilization, technology, science, all that sort of stuff. But if we keep going down that path exclusively, we're going to blow ourselves up.
But alongside that,
same thing for us as individuals.
Yeah,
it's not just out there. If we keep going purely intellectually and don't integrate it into enjoying our life and consciously creating success for our body and with each other.
Well, yeah, I mean, we call it religion, or we've kind of compartmentalized spirituality, or the non-material part of life. Let's call it that, the non-material part of life. We've compartmentalized it into these little clubs called religion. You know, you might be in the Christian club, or you might be in the New Age club, or you might be in the Muslim club or the Hindu club. There's all these clubs, as I like to refer them, and I'm not in any of them. But within them are the residual truths and things that really work when balanced off with the sciences and the material world, the metaphysical world, let me call it that for want of a better word, is vitally important. This is where I see the merge happening between the religions and spirituality and the sciences, like human design. The technology known as human design is a fairly replete compilation of science and, you know, spirituality, religion, or metaphysical, I guess, if you like, because it's dealing with some intangibles, okay, like energy, for example. We spent a lot of time today talking about emotional energy and mental energy, and these are kind of, okay, they might be generated by the material on a large level, but they're non-material. It's like, you know, if I'm thinking about my future and what I want for my future at best is potential. It's not material. I can't reach it. I can't touch it. I can't experience it now. So it's projected. It's out. It's beyond me somewhere, and yet it's in me as well. But I'm actually projecting material me into an immaterial me at some point in the future. So that is metaphysical, what I refer to as metaphysical. Okay. So that is, when I understand me in the now, especially the technology of human design and my whole Christian, you know, culture, where I've come from, and put all the parables that I now know so well together into helping me create a better future for myself, I realise that that there is a merging of my physical dynamic, because it would be a complete and utter waste of time for me to project myself into a future of being a nuclear physicist or an astronaut. One, I'm too old, you know, to be an astronaut, and two, I just don't have the motivation to go out there and do the work required to learn that skill set and knowledge and information. But I can project myself into other things that really are within my scope. Okay, so I'm combining, and I see this happening in religion, because, you know, I had a fallout from the Christian religion, the club. I didn't lose sight of the metaphysical, but I lost sight of the club. You know, I just not interested in the club so much anymore, in spite of the fact I can realise it does good for some people, but equally does harm for some people. And there is a merging of these technologies, this projected future and this actual experience in the now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, look, see, as someone who's emotionally defined, you're going to be relating to all of that.
Mm.
As someone who lives in the moment, it doesn't make that irrelevant. But what it does mean is I'm designed to work with what's showing up out of that future.
Sure. You don't though, you know, let me ask you this. I don't think you have no vision of the future, because you've spent time talking about it in 2019. This is what's coming. Mm-hmm. So you've got a projected viewpoint of the future.
Okay, here's the point for the people watching. we're going to relate to it in different ways.
Right.
You've got to start this year, the energy is on how does it actually work for you in the way that you truly enjoy it.
Right.
Right? And that means relaxing, taking responsibility for understanding how you work, making sure that you educate yourself, expand your horizons, but take what you learn there and apply it in the real world in a way that actually does bring out the best in you and make it available to people, right? Because if it does, it will synchronize with the evolution going on in the world. You also need to go, okay, there needs to be a more healed, a more empowered motivation behind what I do, and acknowledgement of who I am. Now, to do that, it means you might have to do some healing on getting clear about what you really want, right? And that's going to take a few years, but it's going to start this year. And you're looking at what you want so it can benefit you and everyone. It's not just, what do I want, and to hell with everybody else.
Sure.
What's happening at the moment is we're evolving into being able to work together. And then you need to go, what technology, what consciousness, what innovations are going to be most valuable to me? Or another way of putting it is, can I be loyal to, because they really work to bring out the best in me? So I can take my role in the world and really be a part of a major shift that's happening. Now, that all boils down, that's a bit overwhelming even to me when I think about saying it. It all boils down to, well, what's most graceful for you? What comes naturally to you? If you start with that next year, see, we've had a year, 2018, where we've had to accept certain things about ourselves on all sorts of levels, but personally, there's certain things you've had to accept about yourself. If you look back over this last year, there's certain things you've had to come to terms with, right? If you haven't, you've really missed out on big opportunity. And the reason you accept where you're at is so you can open up to what you can be, honestly, naturally, not like what you can be in someone else's imagination, what you can be in somebody else's philosophy, what you can be according to someone else's wishes for you, but what it is that comes naturally to you, because you can be the ruler of that kingdom, because you are. Not because you can finally become the ruler of that kingdom. You already are the ruler of that kingdom, because what comes naturally to you is where you rule. Right? Now, that comprises what you do, but also being very deliberate, like all rulers, about who you let advise you and support you, who you make alliances with, because they will bring out the best for you and your kingdom. And to do that, you've got to make great decisions. And the technology, the innovation of making great decisions has been brewing for just over 30 years, otherwise known as human design and a bunch of other things that are going on in the world. And now it's like, show me the value. Make it make a real difference. Show me a way of making decisions that I can be loyal to. And the next 7 years are all about that. But it begins this year, 2019. It begins going, I can be loyal to something if I can enjoy it and it enables me to do what comes naturally to me, and that I can be the ruler in my domain, not the ruler of other people. And then I bring that energy, that grace, that magnificence, you can even call it, that creativity, That glory, nice word. I bring that glory to the people I love in my life, to the people I work with in my business. Now, you can be a billionaire or a millionaire in your business now, and everything's going to grow. It doesn't matter whether you're starting off from scratch and you want to start a business, or you're a billionaire going, where's business happening? Where's it going now? What I'm talking about is where it's going. People working together, but bringing the best out of each other. People having vision, but applying it in the real world to achieve something significant for other people. This next year coming, gaining the wisdom and perspective so you can do that, because in the following years, it's going to get even more.
Sure.
You know, it's like the world is changing. Your contribution starts with you, but it's not changing into something you think you should be. It's embracing who you already are fully and bringing out the full potential of that. Now, in a thing like this, I can't do that for everybody,
sure,
obviously. But I'm not even going to try and get everyone to come and have a consultation. My focus now is, how do I work with people who are going to be influential so that they influence people, because that's leveraging your relationships. You know, I can't bring the end of hunger to the world or the end of poverty to the world, but I've got a family. I can make sure that they have food and they have the money they need to do and to fulfill their dreams. And what I'm discovering is people have extraordinary dreams if you give them the chance. They just need to know how they're designed to do it. And we've been so caught up in so many other people's ideas of how it works for them, exactly, that we need to now start educating people about how does it work for you and giving them ways of discovering how it really works for them. And that's what the rest of my life is committed to. That's my passion, because I'm good at it and it comes naturally to me. So this is the year to make the transition, you know, to really help people bring out what's great about them.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. It's very good. We've got another question here.
No, that was just a comment.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got
an offer of support.
Fantastic. Yeah, we love offers of support. Feel free to make them more of them. We're right into that. Another one here. How do I decide which goals suit me best? So, you know,
this is a really important point. People don't make decisions the same way. Everyone has a unique decision-making process that they need to be loyal to. If you try and make decisions the way other people, it means you have to put aside the decision-making process you already have built into you.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because, you know, we probably grew up in school hearing, you know, somebody or somewhere in our life experience, if we're, you know, a few years old, you know, we've seen the decision-making process where you get a chalkboard, you draw a line down the middle, you put cons over here and you put pros over here, and write down all the things against, and you write down all the things for, and you add them up, and you go, right, well, we've got to do this one or that one or not. That
50% of the world, that could be helpful. For someone like me, it's complete distraction. Because I know immediately. Now, do I need to practice that and get confidence in it and experience in the nuances? This is why there's no theory that's going, even if you identify your correct decision-making process, the theory is not going to do it. And even some experience will show you, well, there's value in pursuing this. But applying it in real life, making, you know, like learning to walk, learning to make decisions the way that works for you, and getting the nuances about your way of walking or rapping or dancing or moving through the world and the gifts that you bring. All of that is something and here's why being conscious of this is so important over the next 7 years, because loyalty is going to be really big. Loyalty to what actually works, what conscious ideas and friendships and networks and technology. Be loyal to the one that gives you value, that brings out your value. not just to something because everybody else does it.
Yeah, and loyalty speaks to trust.
Well,
doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But answer your question. Get educated.
Absolutely.
Because you have a unique way of making decisions. Find out how that works, because that's going to be worth gold. It's going to be worth its weight in gold over the next decades. And next year, it's going to become like gold. People are going to discover it and start applying it and go, my God, this is so much value in this. It saves me so much drama.
It's a good point. You know, I've often taught people that preparation time is never wasted time. And sometimes, you know, we get so caught up in the emergencies of the urgent that we neglect the important. And the important should never be at the tyrannical mercy of the urgent. Because some things that appear, hey, come here, you know, that might seem urgent, but it's actually not important.
But there are some people who are designed to deal with the urgent. It's
in
their design. No, it's what they call the splenic people.
Okay.
They're designed to be first responders.
Okay, good.
Literally. I mean, well, not first responders. They're the people who actually pull people out when it's actually going down and help them survive.
Yeah.
The responders are like my particular way of doing it. And then the people who heal and help people get better and learn from it and put it all together so it doesn't happen again, they're the people who are what they call emotionally defined. And so, you know, there are people who are designed to just bang, bang, bang.
Well, you know, technology is even developing that with artificial intelligence, you know, where self-driving cars, as a for instance, have got these little computer programs that are responding are reacting instantaneously to all the media that's coming in at them, all the various sources of information visually, you know, and radar and all the rest of it. And because that's what you need when you're going to sit in a self-driving car. You know, you don't want somebody to, let me think about that, I'll get back to you. Well, bang, too late, exactly. You're gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're building into cars survival mechanisms, then response mechanisms, and then they're now learning.
Oh, it's a bit hot in the car, let's tune up the AC. You know?
Yeah, and it does it automatically. And now we're creating cars that are relating to the other cars around them, and you don't have to drive them. It's called self-driving.
Yeah.
It's the same thing happening with vehicles. It's happening with us. We're learning how to become self-driving vehicles.
Yeah.
That's the evolution. Now, each of us relate to that in a different way. I'm very open, you're very specific about how you do that. But we all have to deal with that. But it all comes back to really understanding, which is a beautiful question there, how does it suit me best to make decisions? Great. Like that's the gold. If you can identify that in the way it works for you, the future is your oyster.
It's good, isn't it? I think we should finish it right on that note. Okay. It's been a fabulous couple and a half hours with you, and there's some other questions that we'll answer directly via email, and we'll answer all of them. Thanks so much for your time. It's been my pleasure. And
yeah, it's been really full on. I mean, I've just been in the moment with it, so it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and look, if there's any way we can help you, jointly or individually, we're only an email away. We're here to help. We're here to build a team. We're looking for people that can support our visions and our dreams, you know, which is to go out there and influence in our own way, uniquely, the world in which we live and those that respond to us. And so if you want to be part of that, just reach out, because there's so many ways, you know, we can utilise appropriate support. So have a blessed 2019. I hope we catch up some more, and look forward to renewing our relationship in the future.
Take care.
See you. Bye.